Hey you beautiful people, Jason here from Thomann Synthesizers and welcome to my studio, The Sticks. Now joining me today is the rather delightful Novation Circuit, which is an update from the original Groovebox launched way back in 2015. Now the Circuit Tracks retains a lot of the same workflow of the original, so if you own one you should be in fairly familiar territory. If like me however you don't, then Novation have you covered with a series of fab tutorials. These are accessed via a web link on the device itself, so the first thing you'll want to do is to plug it into a computer and hit that link, also checking that you've got the most up-to-date firmware too. The Circuit Tracks gives you 2 polyphonic digital synth tracks using the Nova sound engine, 2 MIDI tracks for sequencing external gear, 4 sample drum tracks where you can of course add your own samples, and this is all housed in a very pleasant to hold box with 8 continuous rotary encoders and 32 RGB backlit velocity sensitive pads. Anyway, it makes the perfect companion for any muso wanting to sit and make music anywhere, not least of all perhaps your couch. Let's dive in and see what we can create with this beauty. What I thought I'd do with this feature is to take you through building a track with the Circuit Tracks using the inbuilt sounds, no external gear, and maybe a couple of samples that I threw in. Let's start with the project. Now let's set the tempo. Let's slow that down a little bit. You also have swing here. Let's have a little bit of swing in our groove. So let's engage the click by pressing Shift and click there. So now we're ready to start building a beat. Each drum is color-coded. The pads then get split into 2 with the 16 steps here and then your samples here, which you go through the page buttons. These page buttons get used a lot. Let's start with a bass drum, shall we? And snare. Once you've selected your sample, you can simply step it. So that would now give us snares on 2 and 4. I can add more sounds to my beat by holding down the second sound and then selecting gives us a different colour, so you know it's a different sample. Let's move on to hi-hats. Drum 2. Find our hi-hat and just do that. Now velocity is fixed for all samples, but you can change them to give you something a little bit more human. So let's do that. Certainly helps. So another thing I like is the micro step. Now the micro step allows us to put more steps in and make it a bit funky. You have up to 6 steps here, which you probably wouldn't want to do because it would sound like this. You can preview it by just hitting the step that you've selected to. So let's half that down to 3. And you can see with a nice swing on how that works. We'll leave our beat like that and we'll go over now to Synth 1. Synth 1 defaults to monophonic. Top left-hand corner, we've got presets. So you've got, again, your pages come in handy here, so up to 128 presets. Of our 4 pages of sounds, page 1 is all basses. Let's try that. Okay, just a little tweak there of the filter envelope to give a softer sound. Synth 2. I think having 16 pads here might be a little restrictive, so you can expand that and have all 32. Or again, we can go back to scales and select the keyboard to give us 2 octaves, which I think might be, again, more useful. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to play, but here we go. That's 2 bars. So we can expand from our 16 steps to 32 by pressing that button there. Blue is 1 to 16, orange 17 to 32. Let's go back to our bass line, which is only 1 bar. If we want to expand synth 1 to 2 bars, we can indeed do that. Holding down duplicate and selecting the 17 to 32 will copy the first 16 bars into the second 16 bars to give you a full 32. Let's talk about effects. So the effects over here gives us 16 different delays, varying in length as you go from 1 to 16, and 8 different reverbs, giving us 1 through 8 greater depth of reverb. Each of these encoders changes the amount of reverb or delay per track. Let's talk about sidechain. So blue will give us the effect. Press it again. Orange gives us a secondary layer. Pick drum 1, and this is where it gets interesting. That's synth 1 and that's synth 2. And that gives us the amount of sidechain effect that you want for your synth. Drum 1, sidechaining, synth 2. I quite like that. Before we move on to samples, a quick overview of the mixer. When you select the mixer on your right hand side here, each one of these lovely color-coded buttons relates to the item above it. So as well as mutes, you get volume control and pan. Page 1 gives you, color-coded again, the volume. So for instance, our pad may be very loud. Encoder 2 relates to synth, and you can see the color coding all the way through there. Pan, very useful again, probably not for the bass line, but okay, let's talk about samples. Drum 3. So let's go to our notes. You've got your drum sounds there, and these are where your samples are stored. To add your own samples with circuit tracks, you simply connect it to your computer and drag and drop into the component software. What have we got? 4 samples of a can being hit with a spoon. Quite a long sample and a short sample of frogs. That is a stairwell door in a hotel I stayed in Munich. That's dialogue which has been treated with Isotope's Vocal Synth 2. Fantastic plugin. Okay, so each of these samples plays 1 hit. So if you have a long sample of some frogs at Hotel Schüsselfeld, it will play in its entirety until you tell it not to. Let's use drum 3 and we'll use our percussive can sounds, okay? I'm quite happy with that one. Drum 4, we'll put our dialogue. It's getting a little lost. Let's go back to the mixer and we'll put the volume up of track 4. Let's look at chaining patterns and using scenes. Here are our patterns. At the moment, glowing are the patterns that we've filled. The ones that are slightly dimmed are empty patterns. We'll duplicate the drums by pressing duplicate, select the source and the destination. Select the source and the destination. Select the source and the destination. Okay, so that's how easy it is to duplicate your drums. So I'll now add a second layer of patterns. Okay. You can record automation with your tracks. So let's do a simple filter sweep. Synth 2, pattern 2, going to keep it nice and simple. In patterns, you can chain one pattern to the next. So pattern 1 follows on to pattern 2 and then returns to pattern 1. It's that simple. Scenes, now that's where the magic happens. Scenes allow you to store any combination of patterns, and then you can also chain them. Let me show you. Let's build this track up. Okay, if we go to our mixer window, holding down Shift, we'll pick that as our first combination. Now I'll build up some more patterns and we'll listen to the end result. Now I've got lots of doorless options here, from Electron to Arturia, and even older gear like my trusty Ensoniq ASRX. What surprised me with this was how quickly I was creating music that sounded good with minimal effort. And that's important, isn't it? But what do you think? Is this a groove box that breaks out of the dance world? Is it something that you could see yourself using in your setup, whatever your style of music? Are the limitations enough to put you off, or a good thing? Thanks again for your time as ever. Please don't forget to subscribe if you don't already do so. Share, enjoy, ding the notification button, and until the next time, don't forget your circuit training.